So first of all, I'd like Dr. Sanders to tell us a little bit about what he does at the University of California at Irvine, the UCI Flood Lab. Tell us a little bit about the kind of research you guys do, the team, and what you're focused on.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me here, and thank you all for your interest in this issue and the opportunity to obviously, share our expertise. So I'm at UC Irvine. We study flooding and erosion. We use satellite observations. We use physics-based models, try to observe the trends that we see in different places. We use what we call first principles, mass balances, energy balances, these sort of fundamental laws of physics to think about why are things moving, what's changing, and can we predict into the future, and use this information to say, how do we manage this problem moving forward? So I bring kind of an engineering mindset in terms of understanding problems, thinking about solutions, recognizing every problem is going to have some trade-offs, and we try to think about those trade-offs and strike a reasonable balance. I'll mention that some folks from my research team are here today, Eva and Tess, and recent graduate students working in the program. They've come to the program from UMass back east and BYU. So we attract people from all over the country. They're interested in these problems, working on graduate study, and then try to do science that's actionable and informs how we manage challenges like this one.
So in your view, and based on the research that you guys have done at UCI, is there any doubt about what the primary cause of our sand issue is?
It's a sand starvation problem. Okay. Across Southern California in particular has systematically built out dams, debris basins that hold back the sediment that would naturally flow out of the mountains. And it turns out that the mountains around Southern California are some of the most erosive mountains in the world. And because they're so steep and we get these intense rainstorms, and we face some really, really, severe flood threats in the region from mountain runoff and mud and debris. And it gets worse after wildfires, as people here have maybe had to deal with lately. So we put that infrastructure in for good reason. 100 years ago, that was the biggest concern on everyone's mind was public safety. We had to build infrastructure to protect the public and would allow the Southern California economy to grow. They didn't have an environmental mindset in 1930 when they built that infrastructure. They weren't thinking about the consequences to the beach that might accumulate decades later. But what we face now is a coastline that is no longer supplied naturally through these rivers the way they once were.
So help us frame how much sand we need. You saw in the video, we just placed 114,000 cubic yards, whatever it is. We have another 86,000 coming. There's kind of the issue of what we need to recharge the system, right? Because we've had like decades of sand starvation that a lot of us just didn't know about, right? Until the beaches hit the tipping point. So we kind of have to replace that. And then there's the issue of, okay, once we've kind of recharged the system, what's the recurring needs that we have? Maybe you can start with the latter part.
Right. Well, the film, first of all, the film does a nice job of saying, San Clemente is an embayment. And you saw the watersheds that drained the embayment. And so you can look at that watershed and say, well, what would naturally that watershed produce to sort of feed this part of the coastline with sand? And past reports suggest that the biggest contributor was San Juan Creek, maybe 70,000 cubic yards a year. Second biggest was San Mateo Creek, maybe 30,000 cubic yards a year. So in sum, those two combined, it's an easy number to remember. It's like 100,000 cubic yards a year would be, in a steady state, how much sand is coming into the beach, and probably how much on average is lost to the ocean. It's not like a system that's going to keep it forever, right? So one way to think about it is that a sustainable plan should be thinking about at least 100,000 cubic yards a year added to the system. But you got this catch-up that you just spoke to. The tanks were empty, right? It's like the coast had been just deprived of its all the sand that would normally sit on sandbars and create interesting wave breaks and things like that. That sand was gone. So there's filling up tank and then keeping it topped off is kind of the strategy you want to look at. And I think the Army Corps project puts you a great step forward towards, getting a nice amount in there. And then the county projects that have brought sand to both Doheny and to North Beach are also adding substantial amounts. That's probably another 100,000 right there. So you're getting ahead several 100,000 over the last few years. It's putting you ahead of average. So, I think the film does a nice job of sort of making the case right there.
Any guess on what we need to recharge the tank, so to speak?
Well, it's probably $1 million to 2 million cubic yards past big projects in the region, like when the Danaport Harbor was constructed, around 1 million cubic yards were placed at that time. And it was like a big injection that provided stability for probably 2 decades after that project.
Okay, great. So we have some numbers. Andy Hall will be up here in a few minutes. He's going to tell us how we get that sand in here. Last question for you. Restoring the flow, right? So we choked off the sand system. You're looking at trying to restore flow. Tell us about that and what needs to happen.
Absolutely. So in the near term, getting sand on beaches is going to mean trucks, it's going to mean barges, and pipelines, and different strategies to try to get sand on the beaches. But the long-term cost-effective solution is to restore the natural function of the streams. And so the question is, how do we do that without creating a flood risk to inland areas? Where can we do that? What kinds of interventions make sense? Is it changes to the way dams are built and designed? Is it changes in the streams, restoring streams? So our team at UC Irvine is leading an initiative to a research project that's going to basically study like how to restore streams of Southern California and how can we retool the operation of dams and spillways to do both the flood protection and the delivery of sediment to the coast and addressing water quality and trying to do stormwater capture. Right now, we kind of design these flood systems that are one-trick ponies. It's protect everybody from floods. That's the main sort of design criteria of the flood channel systems we have in place today. But we can design infrastructure that does more than one thing. But the question is, what does that look like? We don't really know. So I'm going to be leading a research initiative that's going to be Southern California wide and certainly applicable right here in San Clemente to think about this so that we can get the sort of streams restoring those natural supplies by 2050 when these accelerated rates of sea level rise hit.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sanders.